Granny friends, I'm Sara Sach. Welcome back to my crochet channel. Now today's video is our Granny Square of the month. It is Sapphire because it is September. But let's review real quick what the other months were. So January Garnet, February Amethyst, March was Aquamarine. Then we have April, which was the Diamond. And then May was Emerald. And of course I used a darker green, but I used this lighter green for the demo so you could see it. All right, so then we had June Pearl. July was the Ruby. And then August was Peridot. And then of course that brings us to September, which is the Sapphire. Now, the primary birthstone of September is the Sapphire. The birthstone is a gem, comes in many different shades of blue, but usually we see them in jewelry stores in a deep blue. And so what I wanted to capture is a couple of tones of blue. And I really love this pattern. It's really a simple little take on the Granny Square with these different sections on the sides, and I love the way that it turned out with the three different colors. We used like a medium blue and then a light blue and a white. And remember, with all of our squares, I'm doing them inspired by the monthly birthstones. But you don't have to do yours that way. You can do whatever colors that you would like to. At the end, you need to have 2 squares of each of the 12 colors. That will give you 24 squares, and we're going to make a small lapgan. Now, if you want to make your blanket bigger, you can make as many squares as you want to, and you can also incorporate other 6-inch squares into this because it's going to be sort of a crazy blanket. We'll do all 12, we'll do 2 of each, and then in January, we're going to put the blanket together. You can find the complete pattern for the Sapphire on my blog, and it has lots of pictures as well. And you can find that link down in the notes underneath this video. And I've also included on that blog all the links for all the other squares. And I'm also showing you where to find those down in the notes underneath this video. So again, you can find the written patterns for all of them at the link. And then I'll also add all the video links underneath this video as well. That way you won't miss any. So we're using medium weight number 4 acrylic yarn for our squares. Now, if you prefer to use cotton, make sure you do all your squares in the same cotton or cotton blend or acrylic, because remember, if you mix cotton and acrylic together, like you make a cotton square and an acrylic square or a wool square, they're not all going to wash up the same. So whatever yarn fiber that you choose, please use that for your entire blanket, okay? Now I'm using all acrylic yarns, and I've got 3 different brands here. This is Red Heart Super Saver, just in there white. This is I Love This Yarn. This color is called Soft Blue. And then I have this color, which is just called Blue. And this is Yarn Bee Soft and Sleek. And so I'm using 3 different acrylic yarns for this square. And so it is okay to mix your brands as long as you're staying with the same fiber. Okay, and this is a great scrap busting project, doing all these different squares, as you can get rid of a whole bunch of different acrylic yarns. And remember, even though I'm doing them the colors and the color changes that I'm using, you can do whatever colors and color changes that you want. And I've been doing mine mostly in solids, but you don't have to. All right, just get in your yarn stash and have some fun. All right, so we're going to be using the darker blue, the lighter blue, and the white on this project. We're going to be stitching today with our H-hook, which is a 5mm. You need a needle just for weaving in ends and your scissors. One thing I do want to talk to you about is once we finish our squares, we are going to be using a solid color to put all the squares together into a blanket and then trim it. And so you might be looking through your yarn stash and seeing what colors you think would go well with the colors that you chose. Just a heads up on what we're going to be doing. All right, let's make our sapphire square. All right, let's start with our slip knot. We're going to chain 5. We're going to join this into a circle. We'll tie that stay knot. Now, if you prefer to make your beginning circle another way, like, say the magic circle or something, that's totally fine. We're going to go in, pull up a loop, and chain 3. Then we'll stitch 2 double crochets. And chain 2. Now we're going to stitch 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to do this 2 more times. Chain 2 and 3 double crochets. Sorry about my sniffy nose. My allergies are going crazy, and I took my meds, but they're not kicking in yet. So please excuse my sniffing. I'll try to block those out as I can. All righty. Whoops, already a tangle. Chain 2, join to your chain 3. Now we're going to slip stitch in those 2 double crochets, slip stitch in the chain 2 space, and chain 3. And it looks like I've got a tangle to get undone. Got the tangle out, no problem. And this is the way that round or row 1 should look. We've got 4 sets of 3 double crochet, chain 2. We joined to the chain 3, we slip stitched in the 2 double crochets, then slip stitched in the chain 2 space and chained 3. Now we're going to turn this over. We're going to gently pull on that string and we're going to weave that end in, and it will close up that hole in the center. And yes, you can do this at the end if you want to. I just like to get it over with. Then I don't have to worry about it. It's done. And on this square, we have a couple of ends to weave in because we're changing colors twice. All right, so that's done. We'll clip that off. And now round 1 is complete. Okay, let's do row 2. So we're going to stitch 2 more double crochets, 1 and 2, in that chain 2 space and chain 2. And we stitched 2 because our chain 3 counted as our first double crochet. Now we're going to stitch 3 more. 1, 2, whoops, get in there, and 3. And now we're going to chain 1. We're going to skip this first double crochet and double crochet in the second double crochet of those 3, and then chain 1. Now that brings us to our corner. So we'll stitch 3 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, and chain 2. But I want to look back at how this looks before we finish that corner. So here's our corner. Our corner's the same, 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. But on the side, we chained 1, we double crocheted in the second, and chain 1. And then that brought us to that corner. All right, so let me stitch 3 double crochets in that corner. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, double crochet in the second double crochet of those 3, and chain 1. Then we do the next corner. 1, 2, and 3 double crochets, and chain 2, and then 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, double crochet in the second double crochet of those 3, 1, 2, and that would be 3, chain 1, and repeat on the corner. There we go, chain 2 and 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 1, we're going to skip the first, double crochet in that second, chain 1, and join to our chain 3. And then we will slip stitch in those next 2 double crochets, slip stitch in the chain 2 space, and chain 3. All right, so let's take a look at it. I always like to take the corners and kind of spread them out. Then you can see it a little better. Okay, and that's the way that it should look after row 2. We have our 4 corners that are stitched the same, and then on the sides we have a chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. On row 3 we are going to be changing colors, so we don't want to chain 3. So I'm going to take that out. I'm going to cut my yarn, and we're done with our darker blue color. We're going to bring in our light blue color. And then chain 3. I want to make sure we go in and chain 3. And our corner is going to be exactly the same, so we'll stitch 2 more double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. All right, we have to remember when we're changing colors and we're using that chain 3 as our first stitch that we change colors because before we do that, because if I would have left that blue chain 3 in there, that first stitch on my 3rd row would be blue, and that would not be pretty. All right, so chain 1, we're going to double crochet in the chain 1 space, chain 1, and double crochet in the chain 1 space, chain 1, and then we'll go right over to that chain 2 in the corner. And we'll stitch those 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3, chain 2, and 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Then again we'll chain 1, double crochet in the chain 1 space, chain 1, and double crochet in the chain 1 space, and chain 1. And see how those sides look? And then we'll repeat what we did over here on these last 2 sides and join back to our chain 3. I have completed row 3. We joined to our chain 3. We slip stitched in the next 2 double crochets, slip stitch in the chain 2 space, and chained 3 because we're not changing colors on this row. So we're going to stitch 2 more double crochets because our corners are all stitched the same. Our chain 3 counted as our first double crochet. We stitch 2 more and chain 2. Now we're going to stitch 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Now we'll chain 2 and we'll double crochet in that first chain 1 space. Then chain 1, double crochet in the chain 1 space, chain 1, and then double crochet in the next chain 1 space. So we have 3 double crochets instead of 2. Now we're going to chain 2 and then double crochet in the corner, and then we'll make our corner. So we need 3 double crochets, chain 2 and 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. All right, so we'll chain 2, double crochet in the chain 1 space, chain 1, double crochet in the chain 1 space, chain 1 and double crochet in the next chain 1 space, and chain 2. All right, so let's take a look at this. All right, so our corners are all going to be the same, and then on the sides we're going to have a chain 2, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and then chain 2. So here we have chain 2s and here we have chain 1s. All right, and so we'll repeat what we did here on these last 2 sides and corners and join back to our chain 3. I have completed row 4. We have our 4 corners, and then we have our sides with our chain 2, double crochet, chain 1, and then that makes 3 double crochets. Then we chain 2 and then to our corner. Now on this last one, we joined to our chain 3, we slip stitched to the corner, but we're going to cut our yarn because now we're going to use our white, or our third color. This would be really pretty in a black as well for your trim. It would really make the blue stand out. All right, so I brought in my white. We're going to go in, pull up that loop, and chain 3. And again, this row is like the previous row. The only difference is we have more of our spaces. Okay, so let's stitch 2 more double crochets because our chain 3 counted as our first, and then chain 2, and then 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Then we'll chain 2, and we'll come over here to this chain 2 space and double crochet. Then we'll chain 1, double crochet in the chain 1 space, chain 1, double crochet in the, oops, get in there, in the chain 1 space, and chain 1, and then double crochet in that last chain 2 space and chain 2. All right, so we've chained 2, and then we have our 4 double crochets with chain 1s, and then we ended with chain 2. All right, and then that brings us to our corner. So it's basically similar to what we did on the previous row. We just have more double crochets in the middle than we did previously. I decided to grab my mat since we're using a white yarn here. That will make it a little easier for you to see. All right, so let's finish up our corner with our last 3 double crochets. Whoops, missed the chain 2 there. There we go. And chain 2. Then we'll double crochet in the chain 2 space, chain 1, and then double crochet, chain 1 in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, double crochet in the chain 2 space, and chain 2. All right, I wanted you to be able to see that a little bit better. It's hard when I'm working against a white surface. And so you can see our corners are all the same, but our sides are like open mesh work. And so we're going to repeat what we did here on these last 2 sides, and again join back to our chain 3. So I have now completed row 5. We have our 4 corners again that are all the same, and then our mesh work on the side. I joined to my chain 3, slip stitched in the 2 double crochets, and slip stitched in the chain 2 space and only chained 1, because our last row, row 6, is basically just a single crochet row. Okay, so we're going to go in this corner and we're going to single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet in that chain 2 space. Now we'll single crochet in each of the 3 double crochets. Now we have this chain 2 space, so we're going to stitch 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space. Now we'll single crochet in the double crochet, single crochet in the chain 1 space, and we'll repeat that across until we reach that chain 2 space. And when we reach the chain 2 space, we're going to stitch 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. And then we'll stitch 1 single crochet in each of those double crochets. All right, and see how that side looks? This brings us to our next chain 2 space in our next corner. So we're going to single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet in that corner. And then we'll just repeat across here what we did here. We're single crocheting in the double crochets, 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space, 1 single crochet in the double crochet, 1 single crochet in the chain 1 spaces. Then 2 single crochets in the chain 2 space, and then 1 single crochet in each of those double crochets. And so this is giving us a nice solid row of single crochets all the way around the edge of our square. And we'll just repeat what we did here on these last 2 sides, join back to our first single crochet. So now I have a nice row of even single crochets all the way around my square. So I'm going to join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch, cut my yarn. I'm going to go in that next loop and pull that loop to the back. That way we have a nice finish on the front. And then, of course, we need to weave in all of our ends and our square will be done. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a couple of tips here at the end of the video for if your squares aren't coming out the right size or the same size, and a little bit about blocking. So I've gotten a few questions on what happens when I've made my squares and some of them don't meet up. Maybe they're a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch smaller or bigger. Okay, so if your squares are coming out bigger, you can always go down a hook size or 2. If they're coming out smaller, you can always go up a hook size or 2. If all of your squares are coming out smaller and they're meeting up, don't worry about it. And if all of your squares are coming out bigger, but they're all meeting up, don't worry about it. It just means you're stitching a little bit looser or tighter. As long as your squares meet up nicely, you won't have any problem. Now, what happens here? Well, when we go to put them together, we will ease them together and line them up. All right, and so if they're coming out a 1/4 inch different, I don't think I would worry too much about that. All right, another thing that you can do, of course, is block your squares. I like to block my squares. I don't block everything, but and you don't have to, but it makes it a lot better when it comes time to line them up. And all I do is I pin them to a blocking board. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm just looking for them to lay nice and flat. Okay? And some of my squares have, like this one, come out a little bigger. And this one is a little bit smaller. Not quite the same. But I'm not worried about that because, again, we can ease them in together. Where it's a big problem, if it's about a 1/2 inch, then you may need to adjust your hook size. All right, and then I just pin it to a blocking board. And I usually do more pins, but I'm not going to today. I guess I can just to show you. Because sometimes the centers want to pull in, and I don't want that to happen. And so I'll take it and sort of put it at an angle. If you don't have a blocking board, you can use a piece of cardboard with a towel over it. Or sometimes before I picked these up, I picked these up at Michael's many years ago. I have some that were in a 2 set that are a little darker green, and then these lighter green ones were 4 in a set. And I think they were around $5, but I can't remember. You could probably find them on Amazon too. But if you don't want to spend the money, it's okay. Just get a couple of older bath towels that maybe you're not using anymore and lay them out flat and then roll them so that they're a couple of thicknesses, and they'll work just fine. All right, and then what I do is I just take my water bottle and I spritz them. I don't soak them down. I just spritz them, and then I set this on my dryer so that the next time that I do a load of laundry, that heat can come up through there and help dry that square. All right. Again, you don't have to block your squares. You just can if it makes it easier to put them together. All right. So this is our Sapphire square for September. And I hope you're having fun making all of these. I know I am. And I can't wait to get them all done and put together a fun blanket.